Do you know what time it is? It's 9 p.m. That was an anti-joke. The Xbox and the PlayStation in their ninth generation have just hit their 1 year anniversary. And while we've come a long way, we can finally see 4K dashboard on Xbox, and PS5 finally has its NVMe slot unlocked for expanded storage. Took a year, but nonetheless, here we are. There are a lot of features that I do really think PlayStation isn't taking seriously that the Xbox has. As I talked about in my last video, there are a handful of features that I really do miss from the PS5. Notably is mainly the streaming aspect. When it really comes down to it, being able to stream games directly to YouTube or Twitch with built-in camera support natively and etc. That is important for me, but that's really the main feature that I really get drawn to. When I think about the PS5, that's the one thing I miss the most. And when I think of the other way around, with the Xbox Series X, well, technically the S, right there behind me, that is now my primary console, the system I go to play the new Call of Duty, the Battlefield, the Forza Horizon 5 has been phenomenal. And I keep wrapping my head around certain things that I really wish PlayStation would just kind of take more seriously. Not because I personally care. There isn't really much the PlayStation could do at this point to kind of bring me back to it, to make it the place I go to buy my games. Outside of their exclusive games, just like my Nintendo Switch, I'm not going to be using it for much more than that. And a lot of these PlayStation exclusives are a long ways out. So as of right now, the Xbox is getting a lot more of my attention. And with that being said, though, there are definitely some things that when I come to my Xbox, I really think, wow, this is amazing. This just makes sense. And a few of those I just want to highlight because I feel like they're worth talking about and they're worth mentioning. And some of them don't even get a whole lot of credit. The first feature I really think is worth mentioning is FPS boost. I know PlayStation just announced Game Boost to a lot of PS4 games. I think they're starting to catch up on this. But since launch, Xbox Series X and S have allowed you to play a lot of older games or last-gen games with 120 frames per second, or at the very least, a locked 60 frames per second. And this is one of those features that make you really feel like, wow, this is treading on a low-end PC build. Is seeing those higher frame rates. It's really difficult to explain it, but once you see it, it's really hard to go back because I try to play 30 frames per second on Forza Horizon 5, and I want to vomit. I cannot do it. It is bad. Okay, 30 frames per second should not even be a thing anymore. I mean, movies, I believe, still get recorded in 24 frames per second. So outside of video, 30 frames should not be an option. I'm really disappointed in Forza Horizon 5 for not doing 60 frames in quality mode and 120 in performance mode. I'm not a developer. The game is beautiful even in performance mode, and running at the 60 frames makes it very tolerable. I mean, it's a good game. Don't let that, try to keep you away from it if you really care about those frame rates. But when it comes down to it, 30 frames per second is just not it. And 60 frames per second should be the bare minimum that game should be at this point. And Xbox, even though Forza Horizon 5 is kind of in a weird position because of what I just talked about, it's definitely the exception to Xbox's strategy. And these games, playing, as I mentioned in other videos, I recently went through the Gears of War games, and playing Gears of War 1 from the Xbox 360 in 120 frames per second made it feel like it wasn't even an Xbox 360 game outside of the, you know, older graphics and lighting and stuff. So that's a thing. I'm about to start playing through the Halo games. I just played through Halo Reach with a friend, and we're going to go through all of the games leading up to Halo Infinite campaign when that releases next year, I believe it is. Don't quote me on that. But regardless, we're going to play through those, and hearing him complain about playing, you know, he's playing the Master Chief Collection with me. We played Halo Reach, and he was playing on his Xbox One S, and it just nonstop complains, oh, my FPS is dropping right here, and there's like 5 enemies on screen. I'm like, what? And I'm playing on the Series X at the time because my girlfriend was watching me in the living room, and, you know, I'm sitting there playing in 60 frames per second, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. And then I jump to my Series S for near the end of the game because I was like, okay, she's tired, I want to play at my desk because I'm more comfortable there. And 120 frames was just, ooh, it was good. And it's definitely one of those features that you do not notice until you don't have it. It is, if you've never experienced, if you can't process the difference between 60 to 120 or 30 to 60, if that doesn't matter to you, you're lucky. I promise you. It's ignorance is bliss in this situation. Because again, once you have it, it's like if you've slept in a bed your whole life and then you have to sleep on the floor at a friend's house, it's difficult to adjust to that. And it's the same concept here. 3060 is borderline like 30 frames per second having to sleep on the floor. 60 is able to, you know, grab the couch at a big sleepover, and then, you know, the 120 is going to be your bed or a bed in general, something you're more comfortable with, and that's just kind of like what it is. So that's really, I think, a sleeper feature, I guess you could call it, because I just, PlayStation seems to be catching up. I think this game boost feature that they're referring to is going to be releasing to a lot more games, and hopefully a large percentage of their library is going to be supporting that. But they still have that issue with PS3 games. I personally recently purchased a PlayStation 3 FAT backwards compatible system just because I was tired of having to stream the PS3 games on PS Now, and all the games I want to play aren't on that service. So I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself. And it's just, PlayStation's a mess with that, so they need to get on it. Referring to the fast frame rates, that is a wonderful thing and all, but I think what's more notable for this generation is the SSD speeds and just the overall functionality of these faster load times. And both consoles are blazing fast, mind you. I don't have any issues with, you know, waiting for a game to load. As a matter of fact, when I was playing Halo Reach, it was really funny because, you know, booting up the game, I was waiting for my friend to join me, and he was still sitting at the, you know, the splash screen for the game to start loading or whatever, and it hit me right there. And there's a lot of moments too in multiplayer matches where I'm already loaded into the game and I'm still waiting for, you know, especially with cross-play, people on PS4s and such, to where, you know, that ecosystem with Xbox isn't obviously optimized at all because it's a different platform. Those are, it's really noticeable. You really notice the difference in, you know, being the first one into that lobby, which it's kind of a win-lose because, yeah, you're in there faster, but now you technically have a longer wait time. You're loaded in, but you still have to wait because not everyone's on board with this quite yet. With that being said, though, one thing that the PS5 really needs to update itself, if it's even possible, again, I don't know, I'm not Digital Foundry, I don't know how all of this works to its core, but one thing I do know is the PS5 likes to advertise this, you know, data transfer is faster than re-downloading, okay? If I have a game, let's say it's Spider-Man Miles Morales for the PS5. If I download that to my PS5, and let's say for some reason the system put it on the external hard drive, if I needed to transfer that to the internal, because I obviously want to take advantage of the ray tracing and higher frame rates, and you know, the whole reason I have a next gen console, I have to wait. I have to sit there. I might be able to do more than one game at a time, but I have to sit there and watch the transfer happen. And this it bothers me a lot because this has been a thing since the PS3 to now. You would think they'd kind of figure this out, that Xbox has done very well. When I want to transfer a game on the Xbox, let's say the new, that's a terrible, I was going to say the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, because that was something I just recently physically did. I'll stick with it though. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Definitive Edition, whatever, from Game Pass. When I downloaded that, because I wanted to try it and see what the, all the hell was about, it downloaded for some reason on the my external hard drive, which I think is my default storage location. So the Xbox was just doing what I told it to do, I guess. But when it came to transfer that to my expansion card, the little memory card that is so much made fun of so much, it just did it. I was able to just hit, hey, move this to here. Xbox said, okay, cool. Now go play a game and while you wait. I love that, right? Like, PlayStation wants to sit here and say, hey, we would like you to, instead of re-downloading games, it's faster to transfer them from external to internal, or NVMe, whatever, right? I guess NVMe is still internal because you have to put it in the system in that sense. But if you want basically HDD to SDD, you have to wait. You have to sit there and wait. And then at that point, is it really faster? Because if you're sitting there waiting for this game to install, now I can understand if you have really slow internet, waiting, even though your PS5 is unusable while you're waiting for something to transfer from one location to another, they will still be faster because, 15 minutes is going to be much better than 45 minutes. However, from my perspective, I would rather play something or do something than, sit there and wait at a blank screen or not be able to turn off my system or whatever. It's just, it doesn't feel next gen, right? When I'm able to just sit there and say, hey, Xbox, take the one game from my external, put it on the expansion card or your internal memory, and at that same time I could go play a different game off of either locations. I could go browse the store, I could watch Netflix, whatever you want to do. You can do it on the Xbox because they thought ahead on that, and PlayStation needs to figure that out. Again, I don't know if it's a hardware limitation. I don't know why that is, but regardless, they need to really fix that. So speaking of the Xbox just kind of working when it comes to, doing the transfer thing, another thing that just works is, and this is a feature that, again, I thought was just marketing bluff. I think people to this day still think it's marketing bluff, but smart delivery. And smart delivery is really nice when it comes to Game Pass games specifically, and let's be honest, Xbox is really pushing this Game Pass thing. Of course, it works with every game, but Game Pass is where I notice it the most. And that is just the fact that when I go to download a game, I have my default location set to my external hard drive because obviously SSD space is limited compared to my 4 terabyte external hard drive. So if there's a game that has a Series XS enhancement, but is also just Xbox One, backwards compatible or whatever, if I click download, it'll ask me, hey, this requires faster storage because it has Series XS optimization. Would you like to install this instead of on your external, on the expansion card or internal memory? And I can say yes, no. And from there, it will, assuming there's that Xbox One backwards version of it, right? It'll just download the Xbox One version to my external hard drive if I decline wanting to play the optimized version, because there's some instances where I don't really care about the optimization until I know if I enjoy the game or not. So with that being said, it's nice to know that Smart Delivery has my back when it comes to saying, hey, we're not going to download the next gen version of this game when you're putting it on an external hard drive because we know that that's not going to be playable. And a lot of games on Game Pass obviously also play on Xbox One and, PC with that whole side of things. So everything has to just kind of work, and Xbox makes it work with Smart Delivery. I don't have to think about which version of the game I'm going to download after the simple fact of me saying, hey, I want this on internal or not. I want this on my SSD or I want this on my hard drive. After that question, if both versions are available based on where I'm sending it to, Xbox will intelligently deliver the correct version of the game to its location that I told it to send it to. And it's something I just don't have to think about. And it's one of those things that's just, again, just works. And I think PS5 really needs to sort this out, because while they think they've discovered that they need to figure out, hey, we're in this weird pickle of, we want to charge $10 for upgraded games, but we're getting backlash. So, okay, we're going to start giving it out for free for now, or for certain games or whatever. It's still more or less on a case-by-case scenario, I'm sure, until these next gen games for next year start really rolling out, God of War and etc. They're going to still be in this battle of how do we properly upgrade these games, right? PlayStation goes back and forth on things a lot, especially over the last 4 or 5 years now. So PlayStation just kind of still needs to figure out which version they're going to give you and how they're going to let you install it. Because there's many instances where I have a PS5 game on my external hard drive when I wanted the PS4 version of it to my external hard drive, and I had to go back in and uninstall it and make sure I go into the store. And it's just really more of an issue when it comes to using the app, which I do a lot, because while I'm at work, I'm browsing games and thinking, hey, what do I want to play tonight, or whatever. Like, I love the ease of access on downloading games while I'm at work to my consoles. And with the PS5, I have to go back into the store and into the settings and figure it out a little more than the Xbox, especially with just the smart delivery. So I think that's definitely a feature that people need to just stop overlooking, and I'm talking to PlayStation here. Going back to the whole backwards compatibility debate, and I know that this is very subjective. There's many people, like people at PlayStation, who think that there's really no reason to play older versions of games, and if it was worth replaying, that they can just remaster it or whatever and, push it out on the current platform. And this is an issue for me because I'm on the side of game preservation is somewhat important. I think it's important to know where these games came from and what they originally were meant to be. It gets more and more important to, be able to just have those available for whether it's younger generations, whether it's future developers who really want to take that original image and push it in a way that isn't, mixed up at all. And again, this is a whole separate thing. I can make a whole nother video on just game preservation, so I'm not going to get into it. But at the end of the day, one thing that Xbox just clearly does better is backwards compatibility. In terms of ease of access, the fact that I can pop an Xbox 360 disc right into my Xbox Series X or Xbox One if I had one, it's amazing. Even original Xbox games. Like, I wanted to play Call of Duty World at War. Okay, I'd have to go get my PlayStation 3 if I wanted to play World at War right now. But with the Xbox Series X, or if you have an Xbox One, and again, this is just it, Xbox has had this in their pipeline since their big hoopla with the Xbox One launch. I do understand the whole backwards compatibility thing was an issue originally, and they were in a different time before Phil stepped in and was like, hey, we're gonna redo this, okay? But it's a whole mess. And like I mentioned before, I bought an entire old 15-year-old console, a fat PS3, because I was tired of saying, oh, I got a PS2. Okay, that can play my PS1 and PS2 games. I have a PS3 Slim. PS3's covered. And then I was all like, now I have my PS4 Pro and my PS5, which is a little redundant. And I was just saying, this is kind of a mess. And while I do care about game preservation, I also care about simplicity. And I'm not a big fan of clutter. So when it comes to that sort of thing, I was like, how can I play all my games as simply as possible. And of course, not all games are supported on the Xbox in terms of backwards compatibility. But one thing that is for sure is I can do most of the games that matter on one console at this point. Xbox, Xbox 360, naturally Xbox One, and then going forward, series generations of consoles. On the PlayStation side of things, I had to buy the fat PS3, which now covers my 1, 2, and 3, and then my PS5 covers my 4 and 5 generation. The issue with that, though, is the PS3, that late, that early of a model, has a lot of issues, obviously. I mean, I could yellow light, so many different things could happen. So that's a scary thing, but luckily, I got it more as a keepsake in that sense, just in the off chance that, hey, I want to play through all the Call of Duty games. I don't own them all for Xbox because that's not where I grew up with. So if I want to play all my PlayStation game or my Call of Duty games on my PlayStation, I can just, 2 different consoles, 5 generations of Call of Duty, call it good. So, but I think with that being said, Xbox just has that heads up in backwards compatibility, and they understand that that is an important thing to, I think, a lot of the Xbox users. One thing I've noticed, intermingling with you guys on YouTube, jumping into the Xbox community, a lot of people really do care about backwards compatibility a little more than I feel like on the PlayStation side of things, so maybe that's a large part of it. But regardless, enough of you care to the point where they know that needs to be a focal point, and they have an entire division at Xbox dedicated to, bringing older games to the new platforms, whether that may be a remaster because that's all they physically can do, or whether they can just find a way to bring that natively with your disc in your system. There's a wide range of there, but they're actually trying, while PlayStation feels like they'll say they know it's important, but then just not do it and rather charge you another $70 for the same game. So there we are with that. Now, there are a good handful of other features that I do care more about on the Xbox. And at the end of the day, this is my opinion, this is my preference, this is just what I care about in my game system, and not everyone is the same, obviously. I have all the systems. I have my PlayStations, I have my Nintendo, I have my Xbox, and at this point, I'm engrossed to everything there. I play what I want to play, where I want to play it, but with that being said, there is a champion, if you will, and I'm not trying to say that console wars are relevant in this day and age, because at this point, all these systems are so close together, except for Switch, that, it's not really a competition anymore like it used to be. We're definitely getting that line much thinner. But even with that said, there is obviously this end goal I see with Xbox. Xbox definitely has something they're kind of striving towards, and PlayStation seems to just kind of be doing what they know best, and then backtracking whenever they realize, hey, we made a wrong turn. Where did Xbox go? And then they kind of do a U-turn and, take the same turn Xbox did, but they're still in a different lane, right? And then Nintendo's just in another country doing their own thing. It's a whole different situation with them. But regardless, at the end of the day, just take this with a grain of salt. These are the features I care the most about the Xbox, and things that I think PlayStation just needs to focus on or should take seriously. When Xbox says they're going to do this, everyone kind of laughs at it, it feels like, or is like, oh, okay, cool, whatever that means. But then it comes out and it turns people like me, who have been diehard PlayStation fans for 13 years, now I'm on Xbox. Now Xbox gets my money outside of any exclusives. But again, PlayStation hasn't had any exclusives. So, sorry. Alright. Bye.